Hello and welcome back to the Dash Convention Europe. I'm Mark and I'm joined by Demelza Hayes. How's it going, Demelza?
I'm finally out of the closet or the kitchen.
The canteen.
Yeah, I'm out of the canteen now,
Yeah.
so I'm doing good on the outside.
Excellent. You made it out. You made it here today. It's the first time I've seen you in person because we've spoken a couple of times on video. It's really great to meet you in person.
You too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I feel really bad, Demelza, because I actually missed your keynote because I've been in here doing video interviews and people were talking about like charts and stuff that you were showing. So let's go back to the basics. So if I understand correctly from memory, you're a crypto fund manager analyst, is that correct?
I'm a crypto fund manager.
At Incrementum.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And what was your keynote about today?
Well, basically my keynote today was just showing some statistical analyses of Dash, so trying to put it into perspective with other coins. So basically, I write a report called the Crypto Research Report, and in that report, we do a lot of data analysis. So we use Python to basically pull data from different APIs, and then we can make some really cool charts. So today I just wanted to show people, for example, like what does Dash active user accounts look like compared to Zcash? What does it look like compared to Monero, for example? Other indicators that I showed, other metrics that I showed were the network value to transaction ratio, network value to active user account ratio, trying to kind of understand some of the metrics that some fund managers use in order to decide when to buy and when to sell.
And what was your takeaway? Do you think Dash is healthy? Did you like what you saw?
Well, I think that if you look at active user accounts, Dash has one of the strongest growth rates. And it's been going on since 2017. If you look at the chart, it's basically kind of stable, and then after 2017, it really starts to take a huge increase in growth. Whereas with Monero, it was actually the opposite. In 2014, it peaked, and then it's been really regularly stable since then. And it was the same with Zcash. Zcash actually had a big hump, and then it started to crash again around late 2018. So actually, as far as growth rates go, Dash was the only one out of the privacy coin cohort that had an uptrend still. So I think that that's a really good sign because active user accounts means there's a non-zero balance. That means that they're actually they're not just one person creating thousands. I mean, it could be, but they have to be filling those accounts with value. So I think that's a good sign, health for the network.
One thing that we spoke about on the podcast was perception and regulation. And Dash was added to Coinbase recently, and I think we would agree that's probably one of the most, if not the most regulated exchange. So in terms of perception, especially when you're talking to big institutional people and also big money players, as you do you look at Dash now differently because of that, or is it just like another day for you?
Well, I think one thing is that a lot of investors in Europe don't really know what Coinbase is that much. I mean, because it's not, at least in the German-speaking countries, because it's not the exchange where a lot of the German-speaking investors use to buy crypto. But I do think that somehow Dash is becoming more interesting for investors. I have a investor in Vienna that actually wants to basically become the anchor investor for a Dash certificate, which would buy masternodes or launch masternodes, put up the capital for the Dash, and that certificate can be listed on the Swiss Stock Exchange very easily. So that's actually what I mentioned in my lecture at the end, that people that have the technical know-how to launch these masternodes, I have the structured product know-how to launch a certificate, and we have an investor. So the next step is just basically putting us all together and then getting listed on the stock market. And I think Switzerland's really interesting because it actually doesn't cost that much to get your certificate launched and listed. It's around 36,000 in total. So it's basically not going to IPO. It's circumventing all that, and for a lot less money, you can basically sell masternode ownership to retail investors, kind of like how Neptune Dash does it in Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. What was the reaction like when you said that in the keynote?
Everybody started raising their hands. So I think they really liked the idea. I think, the thing is that certificates they're not my favorite product because there's a lot of counterparty risk. That's why I prefer the fund structure. But the fund structure, you need a depot bank, like a custodian bank, as I mentioned in the first interview we had. And Bank Frick still isn't on board with Dash. So if you want to circumvent the regulatory requirement to have a custodian bank, you can just list a certificate, which is a lot less regulated. And basically the certificate is kind of, I think in my opinion, going to be competing with security tokens because it costs about the same. But security tokens have less counterparty risk. So I think in the future, security tokens are more interesting, but for now, it doesn't make sense to like have a company structure that owns masternodes and then to securitize that, because there's no liquidity for those tokens. Whereas if we had a certificate that did that, you would have the liquidity of the stock market of the Swiss exchange. So you're talking about billions of dollars potentially from retail clients that could easily invest through their normal broker. And I think that's why it's a little bit more interesting right now at this moment than a security token. But I think both routes are interesting for getting retail investors in. Yeah.
I think it's really important that you play that pivotal role with investors like that, because there is an educational learning curve. You start talking about masternodes and everything else, it's about making that process simple. My first thought is, obviously when it comes to masternodes, it's the voting and the decentralized governance. So how would we work that in? Obviously, I would imagine Dash is quite unique. I imagine when you talk to investors about different cryptocurrencies and what they offer, and the analytics of it, but Dash having that masternode and being rewarded and receiving payment for providing a service to help the network is a very unique thing, right? And I guess it can be quite overbearing when you're talking to someone about it for the first time.
Very true. I have to tell you the truth. Most of the investors that I speak to, they don't really mind all the additional features. They just want exposure to privacy coins. Because
isn't that back to front? Like, I thought that would be the other way around.
Just recently.
Oh, okay.
So normally it was like Bitcoin, but now this one. So basically, what we are is we are a boutique. So if somebody comes to us and says, "Okay, I want this product," we figure out how to set it up. And we had a Viennese investor that said they had 5 million to invest in privacy coins, and my first thought was masternodes, because you have a 6% return. And now we're looking at all sorts of different ways to do this for this unique client. But basically, they don't really, they just see the future of being more regulated and more, Bitcoin's fungibility issues and all these kinds of things. They're not really comfortable with that, and they kind of see some of those problems. So as far as like what we would do with the actual vote, I don't know. We'd have to actually see how we would delegate that. I mean, because we're not, like I said, we're experts more on this traditional finance side, not so much on figuring out which proposals are going to be the best for the future of Dash. So I think we would have to figure out the right way to do that. I mean, how does all nodes handle that? Do they take your vote, or?
Well, with all nodes, they only facilitate the hosting.
Okay.
So the voting would be done by the actual operator itself, because you're holding that 1000 Dash, should be holding it on your hardware wallet. I was going to say that. So yeah, you would be making those votes yourself. However, there are shared masternode, pooled masternodes. One service is CrowdNode, and where you've kind of got that fractional masternode ownership, they offer voting rights as well.
Okay.
So you've got multiple people sharing a masternode and they're voting all the different proposals. I think it's interesting. I think in terms of a professional product, especially when it comes to institutional money, I think Node 40 really comes to mind, because they've kind of got like the accounting experience as well.
Okay.
I think they've also worked with Salt Lending as well, and obviously they've got a good background there. So I think that might be a conversation worth having. We'll have to connect you, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, bringing people that are knowledgeable on these issues, and then basically making sure that the product is built in a way that the regulators agree, and getting it listed. I think that would be a great step. Yeah,
we kind of that turnkey approach, just to make it straightforward and simple. And so Perry Wooden, if you're watching, I'm going to message you soon and hook you up with Demelza. We're going to have a conversation, so we can push this forward. So that's really interesting, because I wasn't anticipating the Coinbase exchange, because literally a couple of weeks before, Dash actually got delisted from 3 exchanges. So there was a CEX C.io. That's C, not with the S. Which is actually a UK exchange. And then there was two Asian, which I think mainly caters to the South Koreans, Upbit and OKX. And it wasn't, just Dash specific, it was actually privacy coins in general.
Okay.
So that news came out, and then it came out on Coinbase, which completely contradicts everything. She's got the most regulated exchange. But I think that's the educational standpoint. They were talking about the Financial Action Task Force.
Okay.
So it wasn't actually enforced, and I think only a certain number of countries sit in and listen. But I think it's like concerns about privacy, and I think it's just the educational standpoint. So we're having those conversations with those exchanges, but I think it's important to be real and honest, especially if you've got big money coming in having these conversations. But the reason why I mentioned Coinbase is because they've got 30 million users. It's insane. Like, that's bigger than some population in some countries. Did
Dash's price go up the day it got listed? Or were people expecting it was already priced in?
That's an interesting question, because I don't know if well, it did go up, but it was a kind of a transitional phase, because literally a week before we got announced on the Coinbase Pro exchange.
Okay.
And traditionally in the past, to get added onto the main exchange, it could take like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They did it the week afterwards.
Okay.
And then also they've enabled Dash with, for now, 2 confirmations.
Okay.
So that's incredibly much faster. I mean, they could do it with 0 confirmations because of chain locks for instantly confirmed transactions. So think about the arbitrage trading opportunities. So you've got people buying Bitcoin on there, and they're waiting for, potentially an hour for all these confirmations. And then you've got Dash, which is like, and of course Coinbase is doing additional things like commerce. I guess they want to be like the PayPal of the crypto world. So I don't want to talk about Coinbase too much, but I just think it's really interesting, because as you're analysing the market and you're watching things what happen, I do think there is a trend of things that go on, and I think there is a domino effect, and I think the momentum from this event, considering this event was put together in 2 months,
yeah,
and we've
fantastic.
had yourself and all the strategic partners,
really,
and then big announcements.
I'm really impressed. And it's a Sunday. It's great, and it's packed. That's fantastic.
And you didn't have too far to travel.
Yeah, an hour and a half. Not so bad.
Yeah.
Liechtenstein. I mean, Ooster's a little bit further, but yeah, it's not so bad.
So have you enjoyed the event? Have you had time to mingle and network and talk to people?
Networked with a lot of people. Some people have already asked me to get involved with their projects, and that's exciting. It's always exciting to travel the world and see what people are building and meet new people. I have a gazillion ideas all the time. I mean, basically, I recently started writing a weekly newsletter for Bitcoin Swiss, which is one of the largest brokers in Europe, and they our newsletter coming out on Tuesday will be focusing on Dash randomly. We were talking about staking coins, and then we ended up focusing on Dash, and basically through that, I was doing some research, and I was coming up with all these different trading strategy ideas. One trading strategy that I was thinking, would this actually work? Because you have this yield on the master nodes. Could you potentially, let's say you completely hedge your exposure to Dash's price. So you have exposure to the Dash 1,000 per master node. So you're exposed on the long side. Now you could short Dash for 1,000 on an exchange where, I don't know if you can short Dash anywhere, but you would short Dash on an exchange for 1,000 Dash. That would completely null out the position, and then you would just get the yield of 6%. Now I'm imagining that somebody's already doing that, because that's a risk-free return. I mean, there's counterparty risk on the shorting side, wherever you're shorting, but I mean, if that's potentially possible. And then, I mean, it can get riskier and riskier if you take on leverage and stuff like that, but essentially you're getting a return that's so much higher than what any bank account.
You can't get that on high street savings accounts.
Exactly. No matter how much money you have in the account, they're not going to give you.
In fact, for the last decade, there's potentially a new generation that don't even know what saving accounts are.
Exactly.
Because it's just we're living in interesting times, and I think the accessibility is definitely increasing. I feel very encouraged by your comments and your analysis. So when it comes to Dash, do you feel more happy where Dash is right now when we last spoke?
Let's see.
Because there's been a lot of pain in the coin market cap.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of, because there was I think it's still ongoing, but there was the flash hash rate crash in Bitcoin. I think that had a knock-on effect earlier in the week. And of course, a lot of the cryptos still suffer from the movements of Bitcoin. But one potential interesting angle is that there's another keynote speaker here today, Vulturo, and that's going to be the first time we've got a Dash to gold trading pair.
That's awesome.
And you just mentioned hedging, which is really interesting.
Yep.
And there's all different angles that are coming in. So from if you think about, if you put in a proposal to the network, you could have a multi-month proposal, and as you're getting paid to do something, essentially as a grant from the network, because of the dollar price of Dash, it fluctuates. And if you're contracted, essentially contracted to the network to do work, that price can go up and down. You can choose to hedge that a little bit with gold. And the Dash Investment Foundation are talking to the network about potentially doing this as well. But I think in the past you've mentioned some of your, because Incrementum has a number of different funds, right? You've got a crypto fund, you've got I think precious metals fund.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you've got lots of exposure, and I think a large number of your clientele are really big into the precious metals, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we need to hook you up with Vulturo as well.
We already are in touch with Vulturo. Yeah, exactly. So Joshua.
That's correct, the CEO. Yep.
He's really well connected with my boss, Mark Volek, and we actually featured Vulturo in our April edition of the Crypto Research Report because we did it all about gold-backed tokens, and Vulturo is working on one. So we've already. We're actually well connected with them because they're also interested in Austrian economics, and we are, and so we work a lot with people with that kind of philosophical interest in this space.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm really excited about Vulturo. I think that's great.
I think it's great as well.
I love the idea that you can you're actually the owner of the gold. So that's really different from a lot of the other gold-backed token solutions. Basically where, in this case, the assets apparently are ring-fenced. So if anything happens to Vulturo, you're still the owner of the gold. So you just have to trust that the vault is not going to lock you out. But as long as you trust that the vault is going to be here, the vault's not going to be taken over by the state or whatever, but it's in Switzerland, so I'm sure it'll be fine. That's a great solution, because a lot of other gold-backed tokens, when you actually dig into how they actually set up their company, the assets are not ring-fenced on their balance sheet. So if that company goes under...
Exactly, and it's audited as well. And when you're talking about investment from an institutional level... It
has to be ring-fenced.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's fantastic. And Joshua, if you're listening, please forgive me. I think the interesting thing about Vulturo is they said they've developed, I think it was called the Glass Book something, which basically it shows that the gold is allocated and you can see it's there, and it's really good, so they're as transparent as you could possibly be. So I think that's a really, really interesting angle.
I like it.
Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer, right? Put you on the spot.
I always
Panic
say
time.
too much
Red
on
alert.
these interviews.
Well, I mean, we've spoken in the past in private, but I just saw you talking to a Dash Investment Foundation supervisor. Is that something that you think Incrementum could potentially be interested in? Because you've got different avenues. You've got funds that you manage, but you've got you could potentially develop a product in partnership with Node 40, Ordnodes, with Masternodes. You could do a lot, but is that something that interests you?
It is. I think that it'd have to make sense for the diff, but basically one thing is that you can do is just brainstorming. One thing you could do is, normally with a fund or with a certificate, you have your management fee and your performance fee. So it's like, they'll say in the industry a 220 fund, which is like 2% management fee, 20% performance. So if you have, let's say $1 million in there, or if you have $100 million in there, which is more reasonable, then you have a 2% management fee of $2 million, and then if Dash goes up in value, you have 20% of the performance. So the idea for, what would make sense for the diff is not to just buy shares of the fund, because they can easily, they know how to deal with masternodes and everything like that. But what makes more sense is that the diff actually owns part of that fund structure. And so the diff can actually gain from the management fee. So for example, if the diff invests, a certain amount, they get they get a side contract. They get equity of the fund, exactly. So they get a CCAV. They get to hold shares in the CCAV structure, and then they're actually every quarter getting a return on not just their investment, but the whole assets under management. And that's why it makes sense to get this listed on the SIX exchange in Switzerland, because then retail can pour in, and then it makes a lot of sense. And then the actual return that the DIF could get, and us as the issuing investment manager, it would be quite lucrative in general. But I mean, I think it's. I actually want to listen to the DIF presentation soon, because I want to hear what they're actually interested in as far as investments go. And I think with the DIF or without the DIF, we have an investor that's ready to deploy the capital once we have the technical pieces together. And so we'll go forward with it.
Exciting times.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice. It is exciting. It's too many opportunities to take every one of them.
Exactly. So in terms of today in the keynote talks, so the one you're looking most forward to is the Dash Investment Foundation one.
That's what I came here for.
Yeah?
Yep.
So this is of strong interest then?
Yep. It's a business
You're
conference.
playing it cool, but I like it. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic news.
Yeah.
And I really hope that we can find a solution for this Masternode thing. I think it's incredibly attractive. I can't believe more institutional money hasn't actually picked up on it, if I'm honest, because of the raw potential. But it's fantastic. So, correct me if I'm wrong, you said the crypto research report is coming out soon, and it's going to have Dash in it. When's that coming out?
Well, basically, so every week now I write a newsletter for Bitcoin Swiss, and the one on Tuesday, the 1st of October, will be featuring Dash. We'll be showing the staking rewards, comparing it to other staking rewards, and basically talking about, what are the benefits and disadvantages of staking with Dash and that kind of analysis for investors. And in the future, the Crypto Research Report, which we publish on a quarterly basis, the next edition is coming out in October. But what I said during the meeting today was, for this presentation today, I made 20 charts just for Dash. So it would be very easy for me to imagine just publishing a Dash edition of the Crypto Research Report. And I mean, basically, we have now 800,000 readers on an annual basis.
Wow.
We calculated all of the different clicks and different downloads and email subscribers and everything. And when we hard copy editions, when we calculated all that, it was about 50% of readership coming from the German-speaking countries and 50% coming from English speakers all around the world. And I think like a Dash version of the Crypto Research Report would be well received. So I think in the future, definitely not the October edition, but maybe the January edition could be potentially good for great for the readers.
Happy days. Well, Demelza, thanks for talking to us. Hopefully we can have you on the podcast again soon. If you do make any progress, let us know. We want to know ASAP. And when the Dash article comes out, please let me and Joelle know. And we will want to see that. Oh, you
posted it on. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. We want to check that out. Oh, yeah, of course.
That's nice.
We're Dash family now.
Nice.
So
awesome.
Excellent. So on Twitter, people want to follow you. Are Crypto PhD.
Exactly. Crypto PhD. Exactly.
And Incrementum.li.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Good memory.
Yeah. and before we finish, I just want to tell you, my boss. There's a joke we have in our company because my boss kind of looks like you. A little bit. And
handsome guy, right?
Yeah, handsome. And we always say that a pretty face needs more space. Do you have this saying?
I don't know.
UK?
Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Okay.
Is this when I bring out the Stay Dashy glasses?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, do you wanna take us out?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having me on today.
Okay. So we go. Stay positive, stay humble, but most importantly, stay
dashy.